What were the best PLEs slash pay-per-views slash TV specials of 2023? Well, I decided to take a look at putting them in a tier list. So starting at the bottom, I have Bennett. And this doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad PLE or a bad TV special. It just means that it was it doesn't really compare to the other pay-per-views that we had this year, and it doesn't really stand out. And then we have Meh, which is pretty much just, it was a meh pay-per-view. It leaves you feeling unbothered. Again, maybe nothing memorable really happened. And then we have This Was Fine, and that's just it. It was a fine pay-per-view. It wasn't anything spectacular, but nothing really damaging happened. Then we have This Is Awesome, and that is an A-class pay-per-view. A pay-per-view that you want to watch again, which means it's a memorable pay-per-view. It had lots of moments. And finally, because it's his first full calendar year of running WWE Creative, I decided to name the final tier Thank You Triple H, because I just like to thank Triple H for giving us a really awesome year of wrestling. So we're starting with the TV special New Year's Evil, and this is from NXT. Braun Breaker was champion in January. It's crazy to think about. I think they had a spot where the ring ropes actually broke. The middle turnbuckle broke. Braun Breaker actually won the match, and this led to the steel cage match which we had at Vengeance Day. This feels like forever ago. Tiffany Stratton also returned in the show, and Jinder Mahal returned with Indus-Sher. I think that was a really great moment actually, because Jinder Mahal's the last person I expected to re-debut or to return to NXT. So the main event was actually a battle royal to determine the number one contender for Roxanne Perez, and this was Toxic Attraction. So they were the final two in the match. They had this cute little celebration where they thought that they were both winning so they could both challenge Roxanne Perez. And then they had to actually fight to determine a number one contender. Props to these ladies, because Gigi Dolan and JC Jane, they'd both gone over the top rope, and when they both fell at the same time, even in that slow motion replay, I couldn't see who hit the floor first. So props to them, because that was done so well. It was timed really, really, really well. I really enjoyed that spot in particular because of the timing of that spot. I don't know how they got that right. And then they got what they wanted. They had a triple threat match with Roxanne Perez. So, New Year's Evil. I don't know where to put this, to be honest. There wasn't really anything very memorable aside from that spot. I'm going to put this into meh. Next, we're looking at Raw is 30, which is Monday Night Raw's TV special. The show was so complicated because they advertised so many people for the show, and I think we only saw half of them. I know we didn't see the Bella twins, and they even posted that video where they were really upset that they weren't on the show. The one moment that really stands out to me is Bray Wyatt and Undertaker. I don't think we realized at the time how monumental that spot was. Just having Undertaker and Bray Wyatt have that quiet little moment together, and we'll never really know what they said to each other, but we know that Undertaker was basically endorsing Bray Wyatt at the time, which was amazing. There was also that really weird poker thing that happened. Bailey and Becky Lynch didn't happen because it was meant to be a steel cage match, and then the tribal court ran over time, so that didn't happen. DX and Kurt Angle had a really, really cool moment where Kurt Angle tried to join DX. And then, of course, we had the tribal court. Sammy was meant to get kicked out. We had that really awesome moment where it solidified that Jey Uso had finally accepted Sami Zayn, because Sammy had that really nice spot where he said, I have no defense. And then Jey Uso had a defense for Sami Zayn. Oh, I love that moment. Can I put this in This Is Awesome just because of one moment? Granted, it was a very long segment and it was very good. And we had Undertaker and Bray Wyatt. Honestly, I really liked the show, so I think I'm going to put Raw is 30 into This Is Awesome. Moving on to the Royal Rumble 2023, and this is our very first big pay-per-view of the year. I love starting the year with the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is like Christmas to me. And that's why it's one of the big 4 pay-per-views. I really, really love the Royal Rumble. Logan Paul returned in the Royal Rumble. We had that really nice spot with Ricochet. Brock Lesnar was in the show. Cody versus Gunther. If there was ever a way for the number 30 spot to earn the win for the Royal Rumble, this is how you do it. It's the most Cody Rhodes thing Cody Rhodes could do, because of course he's going to do the babyface thing where he has to fight for his win. And of course Cody Rhodes did it. He fought for the win against Gunther. They had like a spectacular 15-minute match to determine the winner of the Royal Rumble. We also had the Pitch Black match, and it's so sad to think about, but to be honest, even though I didn't like it at the time, looking at it in hindsight, it's actually a really great way to honor Bray Wyatt's memory, because it just shows his creativity. Rhea Ripley won the Royal Rumble. I think this is one of those years where I completely agree with the winners of the Royal Rumble. There were no two better people to win the Royal Rumble than Rhea Ripley and Cody Rhodes. We had Sami Zayn leaving the bloodline. So the main event was Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns. Roman won, of course, in his sneaky Roman Reigns way. He won. And then they started to beat down Kevin Owens. But by beat down, I mean like I don't think Kevin Owens could stand after the Royal Rumble. Then we see a little bit of regret in Sami Zayn, and he starts thinking about all the things that the Bloodline have been doing. And finally, the chair shot heard around the world. He hit Roman Reigns in the back with a chair. And then you can see the shock in Jey Uso's eyes. You can see, I don't know if it's instant regret or instant relief in Sami Zayn's face, but you could see one of those. And so good. I loved this so much. So because we had 2 very good Royal Rumbles and 2 definite winners who deserved to win the Royal Rumble, and of course Sami Zayn leaving the bloodline and that really, really good story of how he left the bloodline, I can't put the Royal Rumble into anything else but thank you, Triple H. This has to be a thank you, Triple H moment. And now for NXT's first premium live events of the year, it's NXT Vengeance Day. Oh, NXT Vengeance Day. To be honest, I don't think there was anything that stood out in this pay-per-view. So we had Wesley versus Dijak, decent match. We had Dabba-Kato turning on Apollo Crews, returning and then turning on Apollo Crews. First he saved him, then he turned on him. Toxic Attraction blew up because they couldn't get along while fighting Roxanne Perez in that triple threat match. And then the steel cage match between Braun Breaker and Grayson Waller. So all of these matches were pretty decent matches. I don't think there was anything very stand out or very memorable about any of them. Unfortunately, even though there was some very good wrestling, I have to put this in Bennett. Compared to everything else we got this year, this wasn't the most incredible thing we've ever seen. Here we freaking go, because it's the Elimination Chamber 2023. So, of course, I have to say that Montreal is one of the best crowds we've had this year, and a crowd can really make or break a pay-per-view. I think if this was anywhere else, this pay-per-view would not have worked at all. So, aside from the incredible reaction to Sami Zayn, is there really anything else that was stand out, that was really good in this pay-per-view? I don't think so. I think, the return of Kevin Owens was really great. Austin Theory retained his title in the Elimination Chamber thanks to some help from Logan Paul. What the actual hell? This was a continuation of the build to Logan Paul versus Seth Rollins, which, by the way, was a really good match, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Asuka won the Women's Elimination Chamber, and she'll face Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. Yeah, I think overall, aside from the incredible, incredible reaction to Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, and Sami losing, Sami Zayn losing that match to Roman Reigns was heartbreaking just because of the reaction of that crowd. And To be honest, that match was so good because I I believed every single one of those near falls. I actually thought there was a chance that Sami Zayn was going to beat Roman Reigns. So because there wasn't anything too spectacular aside from Sami Zayn, and because I think the crowd really, really helped make that pay-per-view what it was, I'm going to put this into This Is Fine. So let's move on to NXT Road Block 2023, and this was another TV special. So Dijak has really cemented himself as the guy that just does all of the weird stipulations on NXT because he had a jailhouse match with Tony D'Angelo, which was like I'm sorry, but that match was really good, but also really weird. So Braun Breaker was still face at the time, and we had Braun Breaker and the Creed brothers versus Indus Really good match. Again, Julius Creed is a standout talent. He's absolutely incredible, and I'm so glad he gets to prove himself every week on Monday Night Raw now. In the main event, we had Roxanne Perez versus Miko Satomura. Looking at this in hindsight, it was a really good match with a very, very, very strange and unnecessary ending. So Roxanne Perez wins the match. She has this really great moments where Miko Satomura actually lifts her hand and then she collapses. She just falls to the mat. And so then they make a storyline out of it where she says it's due to anxiety and we have a very anxious champion. And then, well, she doesn't really win the title again after that. I don't know. I don't like this, especially because of how it was handled afterwards. I didn't really like this too much. And to be honest, it's one of NXT's weakest shows this year. Because, I mean, Breaker and Creed's versus Indus although it was really nice, I don't think it was a very standout match. Perez versus Satomura was very decent. And then the jailhouse match to start the show was a pretty good opener, but it was okay. So for that reason, this is going into the bin and I am binning it. So now we're going into an NXT PLE and this is NXT Stand and Deliver 2023. We had a fatal 5-way ladder match to crown the new NXT Women's Champion and Carmelo Hayes defeated Braun Breaker to become the new NXT Champion. So this was a really great moment for Indy Hartwell because Dexter Loomis also returned to help her win the title. Really, really nice moment for Indy Hartwell. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, I really, really wanted them to hold the titles longer, but then they got drafted to Raw, and then they lost it to Rousey and Shayna, and that was also useless because Rousey and Shayna didn't do anything with the titles. The booking of the women's tag team division is silly, but anyway. And then Carmelo Hayes winning the title was really, really great. The thing for me is that NXT always has really great wrestling. So even if the wrestling on the show is really good, that can't make it a standout, really good NXT show anymore because every show has really good wrestling. Even between the ad breaks, they have picture in picture, so the wrestling is always good. Sometimes I'm really frustrated with NXT because the best moments of the matches happen within that picture in picture. Yeah, I think really nice moment for Indy Hartwell, really nice moment for Carmelo Hayes, but overall, nothing really too incredible happened in the show. So I'm putting NXT Stand and Deliver into meh. Okay, it's the biggest show of the year. It's night one of WrestleMania. Huge win for Rhea Ripley against Charlotte Flair. Very decisive and a nice callback because of the way Charlotte beat Rhea in NXT for the NXT title. So Rhea finally got some payback for that. Really great moment for Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens because they defeated the Usos. They broke that very, very long title reign. So that was really nice. Very disappointing match, surprisingly, from Austin Theory and John Cena. I mean, Austin Theory even bit him in that match, I think, but it was meant to be a hot opener, but I really didn't enjoy this match. It felt very weird. And it felt like John Cena was missing a step, and then Austin Theory was he was being far too heelish and not in the comedic Austin Theory heelish way that was very funny, but we had that phase of like very serious Austin Theory after he lost the briefcase. It felt very uncomfortable to watch. So didn't really like that match. Absolutely excellent match between Logan Paul and Seth Rollins. But I hate Logan Paul matches because every single time he has a match, I have to admit how good he is in the ring. And I hate admitting that, but Logan Paul was really, really good in this match. Rey Mysterio versus Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio has gotten so good. Dominic Mysterio is, in my opinion, the best thing that happened in 2023. It feels like with the Judgment Day, he's really found himself and he's really just grown leaps and bounds with the Judgment Day, but also into his own character, which is so good. Dominic Mysterio, just the workhorse for 2023. And really nice moment with him throwing water at his sister and his sister not actually expecting it. So Aaliyah ready to charge and freaking hurt Dominic Mysterio. Really good. Really good match. And then Damage Control versus Becky, Trish, and Lita. And this started that really nice run for Lita as well as for Trish. So yeah, overall, can't complain about the show. Really, really good. And that's why WrestleMania Night 1 is going into This Is Awesome. So that brings us to WrestleMania Night 2. And of course, I have to talk about Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, Finn Balor versus Edge inside Hell in a Cell, Gunther, Sheamus, and Drew McIntyre having an absolutely incredible match. Bianca Belair also retained a title against Asuka. Versus Asuka, you can't really have a match between the two of them and get anything less than a really, really good match. Finn Balor versus Edge. The worst thing to come out of that match was the Finn 14 Staples t-shirts. I don't know how that got approved, but it did. You guys don't remember Finn Balor cut his head open on a ladder. But like really, really badly cut his head open on a ladder when Edge threw a ladder at him. Okay, and then Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. Never in my life have I felt this disappointed and this deflated with the ending of a match. The one thing that I thought was a guarantee in the show was Cody beating Roman. And Cody didn't beat Roman. So I was just so deflated because I really thought Cody was going to win. And then he didn't. And I'm just, I felt so empty after that loss. Now, purely just because of that reaction, because there were so many strong emotions going into that match and then coming out of the pay-per-view, purely because of that. I can't, purely because of that. Like, wrestling is just, it's full of moments, it's full of stories, it's full of emotions. And the only time that something is really bad in wrestling is when it gets no reaction, is when you have that meh, I don't care that it happened moments. And because I felt so strongly about Cody winning, and because he didn't win, and that deflated, empty feeling that I had, but also the rush of emotions for Sheamus versus McIntyre versus Gunther, I can't put this in anything else but thank you, Triple H, because even though I was disappointed, that was such a good show. Like I said, the only time wrestling is very bad is when you feel absolutely indifference about it. So, yeah, because of all of those strong emotions and strong reactions, you can't put it in anything other than thank you, Triple H. Up next is NXT Spring Breakin. And to be honest, I didn't really care about the show. I really didn't care. So we had Grayson Waller versus Carmelo Hayes, the first match. We had Andre Chase versus Braun Breaker because Braun Breaker finally turned heel. We had the trunk match between the D'Angelo family and Pretty Deadly, and this was just a setup for Pretty Deadly to go to the main roster. And then Indy Hartwell won a triple threat match before also moving to the main roster and vacating her title. It feels like nothing in the show mattered because Andre Chase versus Braun Breaker led to nothing. And then half of the people in the show ended up going to the main roster in the draft anyway. And it's really not Shawn Michaels' fault. It's just that everyone ended up moving to Raw or SmackDown. Grayson Waller moved to SmackDown. Indy Hartwell moved to Raw. Pretty Deadly moved to SmackDown. So it feels like the show was just there for the sake of having a show. And that's what I don't like about some of the TV specials. Like I said, really good wrestling in every single episode of NXT. So it doesn't matter that there was really good wrestling on the show. I mean, the trunk match was really funny. Also, it ended in murder because they threw them in a lake? I don't know. Anyway, so to be honest, I can't put this any higher than meh because it happened. And then everyone moves to the main roster. Here we go. We're back on the main roster, and this is probably one of my favorite shows of the year. It's WWE Backlash, and this was in Puerto Rico. Such a good crowd. That crowd was hyped from start to finish. Loved that crowd. Standout match for me in that pay-per-view is Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest. To me, that was the main event and was absolutely awesome. We also had Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar, the first match. We had Rhea Ripley versus Zelina Vega. Really, really nice moment for Zelina Vega in her home country to have that standing ovation. For it to be so loud and for her to be so emotional about it, absolutely awesome. The only match that really didn't matter to me, ironically, was the Bloodline versus Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Matt Riddle. I know that you want to put as many people on a pay-per-view as possible, especially on such a big pay-per-view, but this match really wasn't necessary because we had Cody versus Brock, Ripley versus Zelina Vega in her hometown, and Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest in a street fight. Of course, I'm not going to care about the Bloodline, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens, and Matt Riddle. And it's unfortunate, but when you have a card this strong, the Bloodline really doesn't matter. So we saw Carlito return, we saw the LWO help out against the Judgment Day. Really, really, really good. I can't put this into anything other than thank you, Triple H, because this was so good. So there were 2 pay-per-views back to back, not in the United States, which is crazy to think about, but that happened this year. We're going to Saudi Arabia for Night of Champions 2023. Cody versus Brock 2, Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus. Asuka wins the title. The inaugural champion for the World Heavyweight Championship is crowned. That was Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles. Very, very, very good match. And initially, I didn't agree with this because it was guaranteed to be a Raw title because you wouldn't introduce, or should I say reintroduce the title. They're not acknowledging that this title was held by anyone else, so I don't know if I should, but yeah, the World Heavyweight Championship is not a new championship. You're just refusing to admit that it has history. Anyway, I didn't understand why the tournament for the title was held across both brands when we all knew it was meant to be a Raw title because Roman had both titles on SmackDown. It turned out to be for the best because we got Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles in one of the most incredible matches of the year. Can I talk about this pay-per-view without talking about the implosion of the Bloodline? So this match was meant to be Roman trying to hold more titles because it was Roman and Solo versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Jimmy Uso finally kicked Roman Reigns in the face. And then you get Jey Uso going, oh my gosh, why did you do that? And then Jey kicked Roman in the face. And then the Usos have finally left the Bloodline. That is such good storytelling, such a great moment. And then, of course, the great match between Seth and AJ. Really good match between Becky and Trish. This is when I looked at Trish and I was like, funny enough, it feels like she's in her prime now. Even though she had a really great career, it felt like she is at her best now. And after this match, this is why I thought that. This was such a good match between Becky and Trish, and they had an even better match later on, but this was so good. So, Night of Champions, I'm actually also going to put this into Thank You Triple H because that was such a good show. There was so much to talk about, so much to think about. And now we're at NXT Battleground, which feels like such a step down from Backlash and Night of Champions. But yeah, we're at NXT Battleground. Tiffany Stratton wins the NXT Women's Championship. We had Ilya Dragunov versus Dijak in a last man standing match. My goodness, that match was absolutely insane, and it's the only thing that really stands out to me in this card. We had Carmelo Hayes versus Braun Breaker again, and oh my word. So the only thing I really remember from this is Carmelo Hayes going for nothing but nets and then Braun Breaker just spearing him in midair. But aside from like the really good match between Dijak and Dragunov and then Breaker spearing Hayes midair, there's nothing really that stands out too much. So for that reason, this is going into this is fine because that's it. It was fine. NXT Gold Rush Night 1. So we had Wesley versus Tyler Bates, absolutely incredible match. Cora Jade versus Dana Brooke, very decent. A lot of number one contenders matches to set up for next week. And of course, the main event. Seth Rollins returned to NXT to defend the World Heavyweight Championship against Braun Breaker. When Braun Breaker called out Seth Rollins, my reaction was actually, is this really happening? Is this really happening? And yeah, it actually happened. It was actually so good. This match was so good. And then following up on that match, we had Finn Balor attacking Seth Rollins and Seth Rollins getting saved by Carmelo Hayes. To me, this was kind of the start of seeing NXT and main roster merge a little bit because we started seeing more people from main roster go back to NXT, whether it was for one night only or for a whole series of matches. And then we also had Carmelo Hayes on Raw, which was really, really nice. And NXT Gold Rush, for me, is probably one of the best TV specials that they actually had, which is why this is going into Thank You Triple H. Moving on to night 2. The only thing I really cared about was Carmelo Hayes versus Baron Corbin and Tiffany Stratton versus Thea Hale. More so Tiffany Stratton versus Thea Hale because the build to that was so good. Moveset. We don't often see stories of how people actually add moves to their movesets or how they develop a finisher. So having this with Thea Hale was really, really nice. And having that story of Drew Gulak training her so that she could have the Kimura, really, really, really nice. Really enjoyed that. Baron Corbin versus Carmelo Hayes, that was meh to me. After seeing the match, I didn't really care. So for me, the only thing that was really, really good on that card was Thea Hale versus Tiffany Stratton. But to be honest, I think they should have given Thea the title there. It was time. She was like the perfect freaking babyface to win it off of Tiffany Stratton. To be honest, didn't really care about anything other than that match. And because of that, I'm going to put this into meh because that show left me feeling very meh. Do I have to talk about this?
A few moments later.
Money in the Bank 2023. If you guys have seen my predictions videos, you know exactly why this is my reaction to Money in the Bank 2023. Finn Balor should have won that title. That's all I'm going to say, and now I never have to mention it again. Everything else on this card, I agree with. Io Sky and Damian Priest were definitely the right choices for Money in the Bank. We had two legacies in the show with Dominic Mysterio versus Cody Rhodes. Really good match. Of course, we had the Usos versus Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa in the Bloodline Civil War. The Money in the Bank matches were so good. And because we definitely had the right winners for the Money in the Bank, and the Bloodline Civil War had so much going into it, so much emotion, and Jey Uso finally pinning Roman Reigns, I can't put this in anything other than this is awesome. It has to go there. Money in the Bank 2023, also because it was in Europe, and such a good crowd, such a good atmosphere, really nice moment for Jey Uso. The Great American Bash 2023. So this is another NXT show. We had Gable Steveson debut against Baron Corbin, but still really, really great and really good for Baron Corbin because it gets him on TV. Roxanne Perez versus Blair Davenport in a Weapons Wild match. And then Dominic Mysterio defended the title against Mustafa Ali and Wesley. I never wanted Dominic Mysterio to ever lose that North American title, but now he's lost it twice. So who knows anymore. And then of course we got Carmelo Hayes versus Ilya Dragunov. The first match. Very, very, very good match. Loved that match. Overall, this pay-per-view was fine. This is fine. SummerSlam 2023, let's freaking go. Rollins versus Balor for the 100th time. Balor still didn't win the title. The MMA fight between Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey was meh. Cody versus Brock 3. My freaking word. If there was ever a rubber match of all rubber matches, it's this one. Cody versus Brock 3. So good. SummerSlam Battle Royal, meh, because, well, there was only one person who should have won that, and he did win it. LA Knight. Thankfully, after this, they realized that there's so much more that you can do with LA Knight than just stick him in a random battle royal. And of course, tribal combats. You have Jimmy Uso betray Jey Uso, and his reasoning is, I want to protect you from becoming Roman, which is completely understandable. But for me, if that is your twin brother, you want what's best for them. And what's best for them is having a title. That's how sports works. The more you win, the better it is for you. But instead, Jimmy costs him the title. Like, for me, what would have made more sense is if he helped Jey win. So now I understand this because you don't want Roman losing the title because you want him to have that longest 1,000-day streak, whatever. But if I was Jimmy, I would want what's best for my brother, which is for him to have a title. And then you're there as his mentor, as his ally, as his wise man, I guess. And then you stop him from becoming Roman. This is when the bloodline just stops making sense because as Jimmy, why do you betray your brother Jey and then go back to Roman? Why did he go back to Roman? That part didn't make sense for me, is how they brought him back into the bloodline. Yeah, tribal combat happened, and now I guess we're building to Jey versus Jimmy and at WrestleMania, I guess. Anyway, this was fine. This was fine. Let's stop talking about this. This was fine. Okay, now we're moving on to NXT Heatwave. And so, standout match for Trick Williams. This is Trick Williams versus Ilya Dragunov. And this was when I looked at Trick Williams and I was like, this guy is a main event star. This match with Ilya Dragunov really just took Trick Williams to another level. My goodness. And then we also had Carmelo Hayes versus Wesley, which was, it happened. Meh. Don't really, it was fine. And then Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley versus Dragon Lee and Lyra Valkyria. Also, this was fine. I don't think it was like the best of the best matches that it's definitely not the best of the best match that Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio have had. Also feels super unnecessary, just a way to get them on the card. The only thing that people were talking about after this pay-per-view was that Becky Lynch tweeted that she wanted the NXT title. That's all people were talking about. For me, not the strongest show that NXT has ever put on. There are episodes of normal NXT TV that are far better than what the show gave us. So, unfortunately, I have to bin this. I just have to bin it. Payback 2023, Cody Rhodes brought back Jey Uso in an episode of The Grayson Waller Effect. We had LA Knight versus The Miz. We had John Cena as the host of Payback. And after this night, the Judgment Day held all the gold because the Judgment Day defeated Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and are the undisputed tag team champions. Okay. And of course, we got Seth Rollins versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Excellent build, excellent match. I love this version of Shinsuke Nakamura. So, because of the hype for Jey Uso's new song, and the fact that Cody is the one that brought him back, which was very confusing to me at the time, we had some really great moments with John Cena as a backstage interviewer, John Cena as a host. John Cena got to do everything within the WWE that you can do as an onstage presence without wrestling. I mean, he was even the ref for Miz versus Knight. So, this show was just so enjoyable, and I'm going to put this into This Is Awesome. NXT No Mercy. My word. Tag Team Fatal 4-Way. Really, really, really good. Really good Tag Team Fatal 4-Way match. Dragunov versus Hayes 2. You can't have Carmelo Hayes and Ilya Dragunov and not have a good match. Baron Corbin versus Braun Breaker. Really decent match. And of course, Tiffany Stratton versus Becky Lynch in that Extreme Rules match. Such a good match. We also had Becky Lynch feel slightly more vulnerable because she didn't have like that over-the-top gear that she usually has as the man. She didn't even have over-the-top makeup. She just had very natural makeup and just a t-shirt with everything that's important to her on that t-shirt. Her child's name, Seth, Bray Wyatt, quotes about how she became the man and why she's a wrestler. So it felt like a more vulnerable, more open, more down-to-earth Becky Lynch than we're used to, and this was so good. I cannot put this in anything other than This Is Awesome because this is one of NXT's best pay-per-views of this year. Yeah, really great show. Probably the best NXT show, like best NXT pay-per-view of this year, to be honest. Moving on to Fastlane. This show actually made me mad. So really, really excellent last man standing match between Seth Rollins and Shinsuke Nakamura. John Cena and LA Knight versus the Bloodline. Again, really, really excellent. This didn't make sense. Okay. So Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes became this mismatched legacy tag team that defeated the Judgment Day. The Judgment Day have been a cohesive family for over a year, almost 2 years, and Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes beat them? Two people who should have the most tension out of everyone because Jey helped Roman retain against Cody. In what universe did this make sense? Cody Rhodes is just he's too forgiving. He should be like Drew McIntyre and just want to beat up Jey Uso all the time. So aside from the last man standing match between Rollins and Nakamura, that was absolutely excellent. And then seeing John Cena and LA Knight fight on the same team, which was really good. Everything else on that card was fine. So I'm going to put that in This Is Fine. Because it was fine. NXT Halloween Havoc Night 1. And I'm going to be honest with you, aside from Lyra Valkyria pinning Becky Lynch and Jade Cargill watching this main event, there wasn't really too much in the show that made me go, wow, this is absolutely incredible. I mean, Roxanne Perez and Kiana James had a really nice Devil's Playground match that was really fun, but other than that, it was fine. Okay, so Halloween Havoc Night 2. And to me, the Tables, Ladders, and Scares match was probably the standout match for me. That was Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza versus the Creed brothers. Jacy Jane and Thea Hale also challenged Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, and that was fine. And this is when the tension started rising because Trick Williams got attacked. Mello got this opportunity because Trick didn't compete in that Fatal 4-Way match. So, Halloween Havoc. I'm also gonna put this in, this was fine. Okay, Crown Jewel 2023. Now, this was actually really good. I really, really enjoyed the show. We had the return of Kairi Sane, which was absolutely awesome. Rhea Ripley's Fatal 5-Way match, also really good, really unique finish, so I really liked that. Logan Paul defeated Rey Mysterio for the WWE United States Championship, and then also tried to pawn the belt off. So, very, very strange, Logan Paul. Anyway, Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre. Really, really good match. Really enjoyed it. I love, the psychology behind this Drew McIntyre because he's vengeful, but he's also smart in a way that he looked at how Shinsuke Nakamura targeted the back of Seth Rollins and then did the same thing. Really interesting, really loving this version of Drew McIntyre. And then, of course, we had Roman Reigns versus LA Knight. And Roman Reigns, by this point, is actually just starting to get really, really, really tiring. Because for me, he always wins in the same way. It's always interference from Jay, from Jimmy, from Solo, from the freaking wise man Paul Heyman. And then he always wins. And at this point, it's just getting very, very tiring because I wanted Cody Rhodes to win. I wanted Drew McIntyre to win at Clash at the Castle. There was a part of me that thought that Sami Zayn was going to win at Elimination Chamber. And then, of course, I thought Jey Uso could have won at SummerSlam. And at any of those 4 points, Roman Reigns should have actually lost the title. But instead, it's so derived because he always wins in the same way every single time. And it's just, it's so tiring, actually. It's so tiring. But either way, it was a standout match for LA Knight. Really, really good match for him. And I think it really proved that he should be a main eventer. Because of the return of Kairi Sane and how much I really liked that and the storytelling within that, the really good Rhea Ripley match. And to some extent, I'm actually happy that Logan Paul won the title. And of course, the really good match between Rollins and McIntyre. I'm going to put this into This Is Awesome. Survivor Series War Games 2023. I think you guys already know where I'm putting this because Zoe Stark versus Rhea Ripley. Absolutely incredible match. Santos Escobar versus Dragon Lee. Incredible match. Gunther versus Miz. Surprisingly very, very, very good. 2 really good War Games matches. The return of Randy Orton. And in the shock of the century, I never thought that I would ever say this. CM Punk returned to the WWE. So I had a long time to think about this, and I had to really, really just sit with myself and think about this because initially I was very angry. Initially, I was really, really, really mad about this because I didn't see the need for CM Punk to come back. But again, that was such a strong emotion. I was so angry. And I was also mad because it overshadowed Randy Orton's return, and Randy Orton was meant to be the big return of the night. I can't think of a better place to do this though, because you're guaranteed for CM Punk to get a huge giant pop. And again, just because there were so many strong emotions coming into this. The tension between Seth and Cody because they didn't know if Randy Orton was actually going to make it or not. The tension within Judgment Day because Drew McIntyre is on their team and Damian and Drew are kind of having a bit of a feud, and there's always some sort of tension between the Judgment Day because there are so many strong emotions within this pay-per-view. And because in wrestling, the only bad reaction is no reaction, I have to put this in thank you Triple H because he did something that I never thought was possible. This has to go into thank you Triple H. we had Tribute to the Troops as a special edition of SmackDown. The War and Treacy starts of the show, that was really nice. Bobby Lashley winning his match to start off the United States Championship Tournament, that was really nice. He definitely felt like a face in the show because he is a veteran. We had CM Punk tease signing with SmackDown. Cody Rhodes also introduced the United States Drill Army team, which was really, really, really nice. There's no one else that can do that really impassioned promo like Cody Rhodes. Randy Orton and LA Knight versus the Bloodline, and that was fine. I just like seeing everyone get RKOs. For me, Tribute to the Troops 2023 was fine. It's fine. And finally, we're at the end. It's NXT Deadline. So we had Shawn Michaels start the show with CM Punk. That was really, really funny. I love that little like comedic, very easygoing like feeling between the two of them. Really, really nice. Trick Williams won in like the last 40 seconds of that Iron Survivor match. Like that match was absolutely chaotic in the best way possible. Braun Breaker came in and I don't even think his music finished playing before he got that first pinfall. And then he just got another 2, just like that. That was insane. And then Trick Williams, in the last 40 seconds of that match, just decides to win it all and gets 4 pinfalls. My word, that is such a good match. And also because Trick Williams really was the underdog in this match. I mean, he came in and he spent 90% of his time in the penalty box because people just kept pinning him. Every time he got out, he got pinned again. So that was insane. Absolutely loved it. And this is such a nice contrast to Blair Davenport's win because you could see that she was a bit more calculating and Trick Williams felt like he won it through luck, whereas Blair Davenport felt like she calculated and she really worked towards it. So good, really good. Very disappointed that Dominic Mysterio lost the title, but it makes sense because I think Dominic Mysterio is going on to do bigger, better things with the Judgment Day. I genuinely want the Trick Miller story to end. Trick Williams needs to be the biggest babyface on NXT. Carmelo Hayes needs to turn heel and become the biggest heel in NXT once again because I love heel Carmelo Hayes. But to be honest, you can see that Lexus King is going to be a star in WWE. He really is going to be a star. You know what? NXT Deadline, this is awesome. So I'm just sorting it out to see what the weakest show of every tier is, what the best show of every tier is, and then we can have a weakest and best show of the year as a whole. But yeah, so this is what I thought of every pay-per-view in 2023. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a huge thumbs up. Smack the notification button if you want to. But yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of every pay-per-view this year. Anyway, as always, be mindful, be kind, and enjoy the festive season. Happy holidays, everyone. Have a good one, and I will see you in 2024.